Hello and welcome to Miss Hannah Loves Grammar. In this video we'll be concentrating on Volume 2 of Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. So at the start of this volume, Victor becomes more distant from his family. It's because he's got a secret that he can't share about how he created the monster that's killed not only his brother but the servant of the house who was falsely accused of William's murder, called Justine. He goes to the Alps and there he finds the monster. Victor wants to kill the monster outright, but claims from his own narration that he feels a duty of care, or the duties of a creator. From chapter 3 of this volume, the monster begins to tell his story to Victor, about how he gradually learnt about the world around him and about society. He even mentions that he tried to teach himself to speak, but couldn't, and his words were too inarticulate. He mentions that he got attacked when he approached a village, so he ran away. The monster hid after that experience of being attacked and observed the routines of a poor rural family called the Laceys. He sees the kindness of the children to their blind father, and he sees hope in humanity. Then an exotic Arabian girl called Sympathy arrives, and he notices that the son, Felix, teaches Sympathy English. The monster takes this opportunity to teach himself how to read. So on a brave day, the monster approaches the blind old man, Mr. de Lacy. He's keen to say hello and get to know him. The others return, and Felix, the son, attacks the monster until he flies flat to the floor and is beaten with a stick. Having been rejected, the monster tries to find his maker, his creator, Victor Frankenstein. En route, he saves a young girl from drowning. But after this, he's then shot by a villager. It's important to note that by this point, the monster has suffered so much in terms of rejection that it does have a knock-on impact on his character. He tries to be friends with a boy called William, who rejects the monster outright because of how he looks. It's almost as if William is a symbol of what society would think of the monster, just based on his looks. And then William reveals that he is a member of the Frankenstein family. The monster describes and admits to killing William, and framing Justine too. Ultimately, the monster believes that his isolation and loneliness have made him both miserable and unable to treat humanity with the humanity you would expect. In chapter 9, he demands outright that Victor make him a companion. And it's interesting that at this point, the narrative shifts back to Victor leading the narration. And Victor agrees to making a female monster, albeit reluctantly. This is an action-packed volume, but it's incredibly powerful to get into the mindset of our monster and develop his awareness of himself and our awareness of how Shelley wants to comment on society and our reactions to the world around us and those who are outsiders. So what does Shelley accentuate in this volume through language? We experience firsthand through the voice of the monster his adjustment to the world. He highlights how hard this is to make sense of the world. It draws attention to how poor a support and nurturing guide the creator, Victor Frankenstein, was. The monster claims he experienced a strange multiplicity of sensations that seized him. And he saw, he felt, he heard and smelt at the same time. We get the sense of the monster being overwhelmed here, and the vague language that we get just from listing the senses heightens his confusion at the world around him. A really formative memory from within his narration is his experiences alongside the de Lacy family. He initially describes them as having gentle manners and beauty, amongst and amidst deep poverty. These traits make the monster feel safe to hide near their home And in a weird way, their poverty is probably akin to him feeling safe in their adversity. The description of them as individuals is superlative, the venerable blind father, the gentle Agatha, and the excellent Felix. These adjectives to describe the family are excellent. But it's important for us to realise that there is an ironic parallel between the monster and Frankenstein himself. Because the monster studies the Lacey family much like they are a clinical, sociological study for him, in a way that Victor examined the monster and created the monster just for an experiment. Fundamentally, though, the Lacey family are significant because the monster believes he could restore happiness to this family, and he collects firewood and does other random acts of kindness that they don't notice. His hope is piqued at one moment, when Sympathy arrives. She is welcomed, although she is different from them. And the monster feels hopeful that he could be accepted, especially as the head of the family is blind. Unfortunately, though, that is not the case. He is rejected once more. And he loses any glimmer of self-worth that he thought he could have had as he clawed back knowledge and tried to socialise himself as if he could communicate and be equal to humans. He says, "I tried to dispel them, but sorrow only increased with knowledge." This accentuates the pain of the rejection, and also that the more that the monster learns of society, the less he knows himself. He questions who he is and what he is worth across this volume. I think Shelley injects this moment for us to question as readers how we treat the outsider. The final significant feature in the structural dynamic of this volume is the sympathy shift that we experience. As readers, our attention shifts from Victor to the monster and back to Victor again across this volume. And whilst Victor is a victim of his own madness and his own desire to do these experiments, he's also a victim for losing his brother and knowing that he is in part, not indeed, but as he says, in effect, partly responsible for these crimes. Yet the monster is very much a victim of society due to his rejection and abandonment from his own creator. It's important that by chapter 8 the monster meets a description of a satanic villain that echoes very much the description that we see from Victor in his own mind, how ugly the monster was in volume 1. But this is grotesque, The monster himself, referring to himself as like the arch-fiend, bore a hell within me. He even declares an everlasting war on the species. The truth is, though, Shelley has given us a fully formed backstory to follow why the monster feels like this. And it's important to question, where does your sympathy shift to by the end of this volume? So what are the takeaways from volume 2? Well, Victor comes face to face with his creation. The monster demonstrates he has a huge capacity to learn, and he seems so human in his experience of emotions and feelings and senses. He desperately wants to be accepted by humans at the start of this volume. When the monster leads the volume in his narration, our sympathy deepens for him. It's important for us as readers to note the difference too between Sympathy being accepted by the Laceys, whilst the monster is totally rejected just on the basis of his different looks. Shelley draws attention to how society rejects those who are different here, and there are questions that we need to ask about how we really react to those that are different today. Rejection changes and damages the monster too, and his character changes, and in many ways so does his fate accordingly. Finally, it's interesting that Victor finishes the volume. The companion being created is a huge concern for Victor, yet a huge victory for the monster, because the monster believes this is his only chance at genuinely avoiding being miserable and getting joy. Why not subscribe to Miss Hannah Loves Grammar for all things English, literary and grammatical?